Okay, welcome back, folks. In this video, I'm going to give you a short lesson on how to go about changing out that old brass flush valve we did in the previous video. I know a lot of you still see these brass flush valves out there, and although my recommendation is when you come across these, put a new tank and bowl in. I mean, it's going to be well worth your while because these tanks that have the old brass flush valves in them use way too much water. But nevertheless, if you feel you want to go about changing it and putting a new style flush valve in, this video will give you a little insight on how to do that. So let's go down to the bench and let's get to work. Okay guys, here we are down at the bench, and I felt that a tabletop demonstration is going to be a little easier on the eyes than for me to try to get all the equipment inside of a bathroom and show you how to do this. But you've determined now that you have an old style brass flush valve in there, and for whatever reason the bottom is all scuffed up and you can't fix it and you want to change it, you want to put a new flush valve in. Well, the procedure is going to be, as always, turn the water off. You're going to flush down the bowl. You'll sponge all the water, the residual water on the bottom of the bowl. And now it's time to take the tank off. Now, to take the tank off, there are two bolts that actually hold it onto the toilet. And for demonstration purposes, we're just going to assume that they came off. A lot of times they don't, and again, I'm going to post various videos on, problems when they arise or how to tackle them. So just for this video, for the sake of showing you how to do this real quickly, we're going to assume that our bolts came off and the tank lifted off rather easily. And in this case, I got it on the bench top. You can put it on the floor however you want to do it. But for demonstration purposes, we're up here on my bench. So we got everything out of there. We got the water out. As a matter of fact, you'll see I even left the fill valve out just so you can see a little better in here. I didn't want to crowd the tank up with all the working parts of the toilet. Now, I'm going to flip this around, and this is what you have. You basically have your two bolts these are the bolts that go through the bowl that hold the tank onto the bowl. Then you're going to have your gasket here. As you can see, this gasket is new. The one that's on there is going to be all ratty, and it's going to be, one that's going to need to be changed. And this will come with the new flush valve. So what do we have to do? Naturally, we're going to pry this washer off. This you're going to get rid of because this is, again, old. Okay, now we have our flush valve nut that's holding the old flush valve in. Now, I got to tell you, most times these nuts don't screw off, and when they don't screw off, the procedure I use basically is I get a hacksaw as such, and I will actually make a series of cuts. I will cut all the way down into this nut, and I generally make two cuts. I'll make one, on the left here. I'll make one on the right. And I'll get down as far to the tank as I can, and then with a screwdriver, I'll actually go in my little cut here, and I'll pop the nut. I'll actually split the nut in half. You can make your cut go down all the way on both sides. You can cut on this side, and you can cut on this side. Once you have this nut split this way and this way, you can actually put a straight blade screwdriver in there and pop the nut, and the nut will pop off. Now when I get down really close, I like to use my little close quarter saw, so that allows me to really get down close to this nut here on the bottom. So I can, once I get my regular hacksaw to make my initial cuts all the way down to the nut, then I take out this old trusty close quarter hacksaw, mini hacksaw, and which is made by Lennox, and this is a great tool. And then I make my final cuts on the nut, one up, one down. I'll put my screwdriver in here, I'll pop that nut, and those nuts will fall off. But for demonstration purposes, we get the old spud wrench out, and we're going to make believe that this nut's going to screw off. Well, we're not going to make believe, it's going to screw off. And so we're going to get this little spud wrench on here. And it's a little tricky to get it caught, but once we get that caught, that nut will start to come off, and this is going to come off like this. Now naturally, this is an old valve, and we're going to pull this out here. Here's your old valve. We don't want that anymore. We're going to put a new style in. So we already went to the home supply to get our new plastic style flush valve, and we're going to reverse the procedure. We're going to take the nut off, and that's going to go inside. The nut will go on. Now, a lot of times, in addition to this nut, you'll have a metal friction washer, which is something I would definitely, if it's not on there, I would ask my plumbing supply person or home supply person if he's got a friction washer to go under here, because it'll make tightening the nut easier. You know, instead of hitting the toilet tank and binding, it'll just continue to turn. Now, when you tighten these, bear in mind, this is China. So you have to be a little careful about, you know, tightening this up. I mean, you don't have to kill this, and you don't have to whack it down like it was the end of the world. So and this wrench is a little tricky to work with, because you're working around the bolts. So you have to be able to fit this wrench in between these two bolts. A lot of times, if these bolts are bad, I'll actually take these off and put new ones in. But in this demonstration, they're on there. So, all right, so we got this in here, and I got this tight to where I'm comfortable that I'm not going to crack the tank. Simply reverse the procedure. We're going to get a brand new flush valve gasket. We're going to put that on there. Make sure that goes over the nut. And now we're ready to put this tank back on the toilet bowl. So basically, you know, we're going to take this. This is going to go down right back on top of the toilet bowl. We're going to bolt it down. But before we do that, I just want to show you what we did inside here. And what we did was we put the new flush valve in, as you can see. Now, you have to be careful when you position these things to make sure. I have mine directly in the middle between the two bolts. A lot of times, depending upon where those bolt holes are, I'll put this to my left. But in this case, if I do that, I'm going to cover the bolt, and we're not going to be able to get at it if we need to. So in this case, I have it facing the back. I have it tightened up. And now at this stage, it's just a matter of putting the tank back onto the bowl. And that I'll show you in another video. But pretty much to just switch out flush valves, there it is. I mean, that's how it's done. There's no mystery to it. The only thing I'll caution you is, like I mentioned, most times these nuts will not come off. So you're ultimately going to have to cut these. These are going to have to be cut. They're going to have to be split, you know, almost down to the porcelain, to the point where you can get a screwdriver in there and pop them. Once that happens, these nuts will just break apart. So I hope this gave you a little insight on how to switch out flush valves. Again, in today's world, there are, I don't want to say thousands, but there are many, so many different varieties of flush valves out there that it's dizzying. You know, what I'm showing you is something that's probably outdated, but just because it's outdated doesn't mean it's not out there anymore. There are hundreds, there are thousands of these out there, just as I'm showing this to you. So just be aware you have options, but today we just showed you how to switch out a brass flush valve for a new plastic flush valve. And naturally, I left the flapper off. After you get everything in there and working, you go in there and you can drop that flapper on and just latch the ears on, and you're in business. So I hope that helps you, folks, and I look forward to the next video. Take care.